It's Create Day, my friends. I needed a 6 faux Cinderblock wall panel for my haunt this year. I already have 5 from several years ago. So I'm going to be showing you how I achieved this look and how I made over the remaining 5 that I already had. Welcome to my channel. Let's get started. I'm using a 4x8 sheet of insulation foam board, and the first step was to get my horizontal lines drawn on here. Using my T-square, I'm making these 8.5 inches apart, and then from there I can go on to making the width of the cinder blocks, which are 16 inches. Of course, you can do whatever size you would like. You could also use this technique to make a brick panel or even a stone rock type panel. Whatever type of panel you want to make out of this foam board, all the techniques would be the same. So I'm going to continue to work down my board, drawing my horizontal line for the next row of cinder blocks, and then move my T-square to make the vertical lines for the cinder blocks. Now I'm doing these offset. So the top row will be offset from the next row and back and forth, back and forth. So I will have 3 cinder blocks across one section. The section below it, they will be offset. So there will be half of a cinder block on each end. So that these are all offset. And this will make more sense when you see this, like it's really hard to see on camera right now what I'm doing. But once I start adding my grout lines with my soldering iron, it will be easier to see and will make more sense. Now I'm using my soldering iron to go ahead and carve into that foam all the grout lines, both horizontally and vertically, of all my cinder blocks that I have drawn on there. You want to do this in a very well ventilated area. I am working in a garage with the doors open, and I have an industrial fan blowing so those fumes go away from me. If that's not an option, you would want to wear a respirator for this. You do not want to inhale those fumes of burning styrofoam. And the depth of the cuts I make on here are not halfway through. Not halfway through the styrofoam. It's just deep enough that I can paint it and it will stand out and have kind of a realistic look to it. So you want to move pretty quickly. This soldering iron melts through this stuff just like butter. So you do not want to linger or push too hard. You just kind of drag it across. I'm using this 3-foot ruler that I have because it's metal and it can withstand what I'm doing on here. And now I'm making my, here's how you can see the offset. I'm making the vertical lines for the next row of cinder blocks, and so they're all offset. And I do this down the entire board. Once that was done, I'm just using the tip of the soldering iron to make some divots and marks in my blocks just to make sure that they look not brand new. They've got to look old and aged and beat up a little bit because this is for a Halloween haunt. With that done, I'm taking my heat gun and going over this entire board. This is, it takes a little bit of time with this one, but I want to show you what this does. It melts this down. It creates kind of a hard plastic-like coating. And so you can totally just use spray paint on these. Like, you don't have to worry about the spray paint eating this at all. And it just gives us this texture that is more like cement or like a cinder block. And it kind of seals it in. You can make those grout lines that I made will kind of melt down in. it just makes everything look a lot better. It makes it sturdier and easier to work with when it comes to painting. So this is the technique I like to use. I don't know if everybody does this, but to me it's worth the extra effort to go ahead and run your heat gun over the entire board. So here it is next to one of my older boards that I had done previously, and the lines line up pretty well, so we're good to go. So now we're on to paint. I am using a sample of house paint that we had left over from when we were trying to decide what color to paint our house. It was pretty old, but I was able to kind of water it down a little bit and get this on here. I would have preferred a more gray color like the other panels. This is more of a taupe, and actually it looks more brown than it really is. But I'm able to work with this. I'm using this as my base coat, and then I can add some gray spray paint to kind of make it look more like the other ones. But in the end, I liked how this one turned out better, so I ended up making them more like this one. And here I'm just taking a brush and touching up all those little spots that my roller couldn't reach. I'm getting into all those grout lines and all the little divots that I made in this styrofoam board. Thank you so much to those of you that are sticking with me throughout this haunt season. While I'm not doing normal crafts, I will be back to my regular crafting after Halloween. This is just something we do for our community, and it really means a lot to me, so I just couldn't give this up. Here it is all painted, and now we're ready to move on to the next step, which is adding some of my satin granite spray paint. I am going to go over just kind of dusting the entire surface of this to add some of that gray back in there to that more taupe color. And then I will be using the same color to go in and paint all of the grout lines. As I'm doing this, it gets in the grout lines, but it also kind of goes over the outside edges just a little bit, and that's fine with me. It helps to really bring more depth to this project. And having that overspray actually becomes more beneficial when I go on to the next step when it comes to blending all these colors together. I'm taking the remainder of that base color I used, and I'm going to add some of my white chalk paint and some of my black acrylic paint and some white acrylic paint because I don't have very much of this white chalk paint left. I thought I just wanted to use this up. And I'm also going to be adding some water to all of this because these paints are all really thick. So I'm going to add in as much of this chalk paint I can get in there, and then add some of the acrylic paint, get that mixed up, and then I add my black acrylic paint and mix that in until I get the consistency and color that I want. I'm going to be brushing this on, and I'm misting my brush first, and then I'm going to be adding water also to this paint as I apply it, and then dabbing it off with a rag. What I'm trying to do here is add this lighter, more gray color, but not total coverage. I want to water this down and remove some of it so that I just get like this haze of this gray over the cinder blocks so that it will look more like the original gray that I did on the other boards. So I will just continue to brush this on, water it down when needed, dab it off with my rag until I get the look that I want. And I'm going to do this over every single block. You can see already what a difference this makes, and it looks a lot lighter here when it's wet than when it's dry. But this really brought this whole project together and made it look more like a realistic cinder block wall. I am finally at the end of this board, and here's how it turned out. I love this so much that I decided to go ahead and make the other ones look more like this one. So now we're on to the makeover of the previous 5 boards that I had made several years ago. Here they are side by side, the new one on the right, the old one on the left, and you can just see how there's so much more depth and dimension on the new one. I couldn't stop. I had to just do a whole new makeover on 5 boards. I'm starting with some flat gray primer to help camouflage some of this black that was on the bottom of these boards. I had made them to look like they were moldy, and I wanted to cover some of that up. So I used the gray primer on the bottom and over, just dusting it over the entire board. And then I went in with this brown called Espresso. I was hoping that dusting this over it would help with achieving some of that taupe color, but then I found this color called Nutmeg and thought that might work a little better. So I went ahead and added that in because then I can go back and tone it down. So now I'm going to go ahead and use that same granite to do all the grout lines. Once that was done, I'm going to go ahead and do the same paint mixture that I did on the first board. I'm going to paint this on here, add some water, wipe some of it off, and I'm just going to try and bring this back to the same similar tone color of my first board, and this ended up working really well. They're not exact, but they look much more similar and will work perfectly in my haunt. I'm going to have 6 of these, 3 on each side for a 12-foot hallway. And in a dark haunt, nobody's going to notice the small differences. I think these are going to work just fine. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find my content useful and will consider subscribing to my channel. But more importantly, I hope I've inspired you to go create or even recreate something. See you next time.